We begin today 6 lines from the bottom of the page and Daf Gimel Amud Beis. So the Gemara here brought a braise that learned out from a pasuk, Isha lachaisa lesikach litzer legalas arvasa oleha. That word oleha that it says by the erva of achais isha, and the word oleha that it says by the mitzvah of yibum. So we learn out that even where there's a mitzvah of yibum, still there's the lav and the erva of achais isha, and there's no yibum. And from there we compare to the rest of arayis. So the Gemara now says as follows: Taime, the only reason that I say that when there's a Issa Erve, the mitzvah of Yibum doesn't apply, the Kos of Rachman Aleh, because we have this limud of Aleh. Ha lav hachi, but if not for this limud, hava mina, then I would say, Achais Isha miyavemes. That even Achais Isha, or the other girsa here is miyavma, that even Achais Isha, the mitzvah of Yibum still applies. The question, however, is, my time. What is the reason I would say? Thank you. What is the reason I would say that the mitzvah of Yibum still applies even when there's a Isser of Erva? What do we have over here? The mitzvah of Yibum is what? It's a mitzvah saseh, and the lav, the Isser Erva, is a mitzvah sloisesa. What's usually the klal? The klal usually is Esa dechaloisesa, but it depends. The Gemara now says, you would think the reason is because the essa of the mitzvah of Yibum should push off the erva, the lav of achais isha or any other of the arayis. But the problem is, when do I say that an essa pushes off a lois essa? That's lois essa greida. That's only if it's just a plain lois essa where there's a punishment of malchus. Loisesa sheyesh by kares, but a loisesa where there's also a chi of kares, which is the arayis that we're speaking about here, midachi. There's an essa push off such a level of a loisesa. So you don't need any pasuk. When there's issa erva and there's issa kares, so then it's going to push away the mitzvah of yibum. That's the question. Now the Gemara is going to come to the answer on this question in a while on. But before the Gemara comes to the answer to that, the Gemara is going to first try to figure out what's b'chlal the source of this whole entire concept of Esa Deicha Lois Esa. Another thing that we have to find the source for it over here is Lois Esa Gereida. Just a plain Lois Esa, which is Malchus and not Kodes, Minol on the Dachi. How do we know that an Esa pushes off a Lois Esa? So this is interesting. The Rishonim discuss this, that really you would think, without any pasuk I would say that a Lois Esa pushes off an Esa. Because the punishment for a lois essa is malchus. If a person does not do a essa, there's no malchus. Simply you would think a lois essa is more important than an essa. But nevertheless, the halacha is a essa is the lois essa. So there has to be a source for this. Alter Rebbe in Tanya, in the beginning of Igeres HaTshuva, also speaks about this. That the emes is a lois essa is more chomer than an essa. When the Gemara talks about the kapara for a lois essa, the kapara for a lois essa requires more than an essa. But Alter Rebbe says, on the other hand, though, the essa is more important because by an essa you draw down oir into the world. When a person refrains of doing a lois essa, you don't bring down oir into the world. And therefore, when you have them both in a situation where there's an essa and a lois essa, the essa is going to be doicha the lois essa to give the yid the ability to bring the oir into the world. That's the way the Alter Rebbe explains it in Tanya. But the Gemara here, this is a chiddush. The concept that essa is doicha lois essa is a chiddush. So what's the source for this? So the Gemara brings here kilayim and tzitzis. Chsiv, or shatnez and tzitzis. The pasuk says, "Leisilba shatnez." In Parshas Kiseitz, it says the lav of not wearing shatnez, and right afterwards it says, in the next pasuk, "Gedilim taselacha," that you should put the tzitzis on the 4 corners of your garment. So from here you see that what is the Torah telling you? That the mitzvah of tzitzis could be fulfilled even if it's shatnez. That's why the Torah puts them both together. Now, Taisus over here, you might think this is a strange drasha. Maybe you should say punkt fakert. The Torah is putting the lav of shatnez together with tzitzis to tell you that even when you're doing the mitzvah of tzitzis, make sure that it should not be shatnez. So the Taisus says, no, that couldn't be the drasha, because if that's what the Torah is coming to tell you, why does it have to tell that to you? I would understand it on my own. There's a lav of shatnez, there's a mitzvah of tzitzis. Why would I think that you're allowed to wear tzitzis, the shatnez? The fact that the Torah puts them together for a certain reason, for a drasha, it must be that the drasha is for a chiddush. And that is to tell you that even if your beged is shatnez, you can still wear tzitzis. And now here the Gemara is going to spend a while to actually explain how this drasha works. Rabbi Lazar says, Smuchim and Atayra minayim. From where do I know when I have 2 psukim that are near each other, that I darshan and compare them to each other to darshan something? Shenemar, because there's a pasuk that says, Smuchim tilim, smuchim la'ad la'olam asuyim be'emes v'yashar. When you have the psukim that are near each other, so this is for a reason to teach you a truth and it's the straight path. In other words, it's trying to bring out a certain point by the smuchim. So that's how I know to darshan smuchim. That's the source. Now the question is, does everybody agree to this kind of a limud? That whenever there are two psukim in Torah near each other, that you compare and learn them out from each other. Based on this concept that the smuchim, so Rav Sheshes, he brought from Rav Elazar ben Azariah a different drasha regarding smuchim as well, which we'll have also later on in the Masechta. Minayin liyevama shenafla lefnei mukishchin. What happens to a Yevama? Her husband passes away, and now she has to get married to the Yavam. But the Yavam, her husband's brother, is a mukishchin. He's full of boils. She can't marry him. She can't live with him. She'ein chais minaisa. So we don't close her. We don't force her and close her mouth that she can't say anything that she wants to leave. Now, the term chaisman is usually used by an animal, but as we'll see, because we're learning it out from the pasuk where it uses that term, so the Gemara uses this lashon chaisman. So we don't force her to marry someone that it's impossible to live with. Shenema, there's actually a machlekes in Rishonim. Some say that mukishchin means literally a person that's mamish despicable and it's impossible to live with. Some say that the Gemara is using an extreme example, but it really means in any situation that she says, this is a man I can't live with. I can't live with him. We have to accept what she says, and we don't force her to go and live with him, and he has to do chalitza for her. Shenemar, so this is also learned from smuchim, from two psukim that are near each other. The pasuk says, leisachsem shor bedishay, which literally is talking about the animal when it's threshing in the field, and not muzzle the animal while it's threshing. So it's talking about muzzling. Right afterwards comes the mitzvah of yibum. Ki yeshvu achim yachtav, brothers live together and one passes away, the mitzvah of yibum. So from here we learn also regarding the woman, the wife, that we don't muzzle her mouth when she comes and argues that I can't marry this person. So that's the source of this concept that we darshan smuchim. But now the Gemara goes on further and says, not everybody agrees that you darshan smuchim. Rav Yosef explained, even according to the opinion that says that usually we do not darshan smuchim, two psukim that are near each other, we do not compare and learn one to the other. The Mishnah Torah darish, but when it comes to psukim in Mishnah Torah and Sefer Dvarim, he will agree that you do darshan smuchim. And the Gemara brings a source for this. The Rabbi Yehuda ba'alma le darish. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that usually does not darshan smuchim, but Rabbi Mishnah Torah darish. In Mishnah Torah he does. Now, Bialma min all in the late darish, where do I see that usually he does not darshan smuchim? So the Gemara brings the entire source of this concept. The Tanya, because we learned in the Braisa as follows. Ben Azai said of the following drasha of smuchim. Ne'amar, it says in the pasuk, this is probably in Parshas Mishpatim, mechashefa lo yisachaya. Do not allow mechashefa to live. So someone that's doing kishav is chayiv misa. And then also right afterwards the pasuk says, v'nema kol shechiv in behema mois yumas. The person that has a relation with an animal is also chayiv misa. Why are these two yisurim put near each other? So Ben Azai said, samchu inyan loy, that's Torah writes it together, ma shechiv in behema beskila, just like by the behema, the pasuk says that the misa there is skila, as it actually brings, it says dmei and bum, and the term dmei and bum means skila. Af mechashefa beskila. So too a mechashefa is chayiv skila. That's what Ben Azai said. But Rabbi Yehuda argued with him. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda v'michi mipnei shesamchu inyan loy. Just because you have these two isurim in the Torah that are written near each other, neitzi zel skila, is that enough of a source to give the mechashefa the misa of skila? So he disagrees with the whole drasha of smuchin here. Ella, so therefore Rabbi Yehuda says is a different source. Oivi yedaini b'chlal mechashvim hoyu. The type of kishiv which is through Oivi Yedaini was l'chatchila included in the whole isser of Mechashefa Leisachaya, any kishiv which includes Oivi Yedaini as well, a form of kishiv. V'lama yatsu. Why does the Torah specify the kishiv of Oivi Yedaini separately? And the reason is lahakish lahem, to compare to what it says by Oivi Yedaini. V'lay melachan, to tell you ma Oivi Yedaini b'skila. Just like by Oivi Yedaini, the Torah spells out that the punishment is skila. Af mechashefa b'skila. So too, every mechashefa is also chayiv skila. Rashi brings that this limud that Rabbi Yehuda is saying here is what we say every morning, called davashoy b'chlal, v'yatzim in a klal. You have a klal, and then there's one detail that leaves that klal. L'lamed, loy l'lamed alatzmi yatsa, l'lamed alaklal kuli yatsa. It's leaving the klal, and the Torah is specifying a detail there to teach you that the same applies to the entire klal. And that's the point here regarding the mechashefa. So here, so far we see that Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of the concept of smuchen, if it's psukim that are not in Sefer Dvarim. Ube Mishnah Torah minol and the Darish. On the other hand, from where do we know that Rabbi Yehuda does agree that in Mishnah Torah you do darshan smuchim? Because we learned in the Mishnah, also later here in the Masechta, Naisa Adam Anusa Saviv Umufutta Saviv. A person is allowed to get married to a woman which his father had a relationship with, but not as a wife though. She was never married to his father. Either an anusa or by force or by inducing her, that is, but she was never his wife. So a person is allowed to marry such a woman. And the same, anusas b'nai and mufuttas b'nai, an anusa of his son or a mufutta of his son. That's allowed. Rabbi Yehuda oiser b'anusas aviv and mufuttas aviv. Rabbi Yehuda says if it's a woman that was an anusa to the father or a mufutta of the father, that's not allowed. So what's the source of Rabbi Yehuda? V'amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. Because when the pasuk talks about not marrying the wife of your father, the pasuk says la yikach ishes eshes aviv. Do not marry your father's wife, even if it's not your mother. And also the pasuk says, "V'lo yigale knaf aviv." Do not reveal the garment of your father. So it's an extra. The pasuk is saying something again here. What is it saying? Kanaf shara aviv lo yigale. The garment that was exposed to your father, you should not expose to yourself. And that Rabbi Yehuda holds refers to an anusa, not only to a wife, but even an anusa of the father. A son is not allowed to marry. And how does he know this? Umimaid ba'anusa. How do we know that this extra pasuk of Lo Yigale Knaf Aviv refers to the anusa of the father? Because ksiv mi lavei dekra. Because earlier, the pasuk before, it says the ksiv v'nasa ne'ish ha'sheichev imo la'avi anayra chamishim kesef. The pasuk before is talking about the whole halacha regarding an anusa, person that lives with a woman by force. The Samech Lei, and right afterwards it says, La Yikach Ish V'Goyim. It says this pasuk about not living with the wife of the father, and therefore we know when it says Knaf Aviv, it means the anus of the father. So what do we see right here? Rabbi Yehuda is darshaning smuchin. And these are psukim that are in Chumash Dvarim. This is psukim in Parshas Kiseitze. Well, now the Gemara concludes the concept. V'Rabbanan, now according to the Rabbanan in that Mishnah that hold that a son could marry a father's anusa, why did they not agree to this drasha? So they say, if when it said before the halachas of an anusa, and right afterwards it would say lo yigale knaf aviv, then it's smuchen. Then you're right. I would darshan it this way. But now this pasuk where it says lo yigale knaf aviv doesn't come right after the pasuk where it speaks about anusa. Why? Because the chsiv lo yikach ishes eshes aviv bintayim. The first part of the pasuk is talking about the father's wife. So therefore he says, that's not smuchin. It says in between another isser, so we can't darshan it. So therefore, according to the Rabbanan, when it says lo yigale knaf aviv, what is that coming to add? B'shemeres yavam akasav medaber. It's saying that a son is not allowed to marry a woman which is a shemeres yavam. Shemeres yavam means that she's waiting to get married to the father. Her husband passed away, and now she has to get married to the brother, and she's waiting. She's a shemeres yavam. She's waiting to get married to his father. And on that, the Torah is saying that you're not allowed, the son is not allowed to marry this shemeres yavam. Now the Gemara will clarify right over here, this shemeres yavam is not allowed to marry anybody else. One of the isurim by every Yevama is that she must marry this brother. She's not allowed to marry anyone else. What do I need a special pasuk to say that the son is not allowed to marry her? No one's allowed to marry her. So the Gemara adds, that means that the pasuk here is coming to say that this son will be over two lavin. The regular lav that there is for every Yevama that marries anyone other than the Yavam. And over here also the fact that it's a shemeres Yavam of your father, there's a second lav. Okay, that's the conclusion of the Gemara, bringing the source that Rabbi Yehuda did not darshan smuchin and the rest of Torah, but when it comes to Mishnah Torah and Chumash Devarim, he does darshan smuchim. Therefore, going back to the psukim by tzitzis and shatnez, over there he darshan smuchim because it's a Mishnah Torah. The Gemara doesn't address that. Yep. Okay, so now the Gemara says, "Ubimish Torah," but now regarding Sefer Devarim as well, my time with the Dorish. Why does he darshan smuchim in Mishnah Torah? So when you learn the Gemara Tiller, it would seem like that the pshat is that for some reason in the rest of Torah he does not darshan smuchim, but in Mishnah Torah he does. But the Gemara says it's not so simple. There's even in Mishnah Torah Gufa, there has to be a special reason why Rabbi Yehuda would agree to darshan smuchim. So the Gemara says, either the reason why he would darshan smuchen in Mishnah Torah is because of muchach. Muchach means that there's something here in the pasuk that's unusual that indicates that you have to darshan smuchim. Or only in a case where the reason is mufni. Mufni means you have an extra pasuk. When there's an extra pasuk, then he says you darshan smuchim. And the Gemara will now explain this over here regarding the psukim that we just brought up, and then it will explain it also regarding the psukim we brought before, regarding tzitzis and shatnez. But just before I go further, there's a machlekes Rishonim about how to learn this Gemara. According to Taisvis, the pshat in the Gemara over here is that Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to the rest of Torah, if there would be mufni, or there would be mufni, or there would be muchach, he would darshan smuchim there as well. But Rabbi Yehuda says, in the rest of Torah, there is never a case of smuchin where there is an indication in the pasuk that there's something extra or there's something unusual that you could darshan smuchin. The only place where Rabbi Yehuda says you find this is in Mishnah Torah. You don't find it anywhere else in Torah. So therefore he darshans smuchin only in Mishnah Torah. But there are other Rishonim that say, the Ravan, the Rebbe quotes this in Sichos, that he says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you'll find in the rest of Torah a case where there's mufni or muchach, which the Gemara calls it, which means that there's something unusual or there's something that's extra, he still won't darshan smuchim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, in order to be able to darshan smuchim, there are two conditions. It has to be dafke in Mishnah Torah, and in addition, it has to be something which is unusual about the pasuk to be able to darshan it. In the rest of Torah, you will never darshan smuchim, even if it's mufni or muchach. And the reason is that's brought because Mishnah Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu said Mipi Atzmai. When Moshe Rabbeinu said Mishnah Torah, so he said it was a Ruach HaKodesh, but he also said it was Melubish in his Seichel when he said it. So therefore, it's something which the Smuchen has a reason for it. But in the rest of Torah, it comes directly from the Eibishter, and there's no way we can darshan any of the Smuchen there. Okay, so the Gemara will now explain regarding these psukim that we just brought, what is unusual about these psukim, or what is extra about these psukim. So the Gemara explains, either the reason is because there's something that's clear here in the pasuk, that it's unusual, and that is, why doesn't the Torah, this whole lav over here, of layikach ishes, eshes aviv, layigalak knaf aviv, it doesn't really belong here. Why doesn't the Torah write this in the parsha of Arayis? It's totally out of place. So that shows you, it's not just smuchen. It's smuchen of something that you see doesn't really belong here. That's one way to look at it. Or we could say mishum de mufni. You see here in the pasuk that there are extra words. It's enough for the Torah to write, don't marry your father's wife. The second half of the pasuk is just totally extra. Because it's extra, that's why he says yidashim smuchim. So that proves to you, because it's extra, it's coming to teach you that even the anusa of the father, a son is also not allowed to marry. Now the Gemara comes back to tzitzis, regarding tzitzis and shatnez. So according to Rav Yehuda, you only darshan smuchim if it's extra. So, or there's a muchach, there's something that's unusual here. So what is it? V'gabe tzitzis nami. So according to Rav Yehuda, regarding tzitzis as well, either there's something unusual here, and therefore Rav Yehuda will darshan smuchim. Or the reason is because there's an extra pasuk here, and therefore he darshans the smuchim. So now we can say the reason is because there's something that's unusual here, because the Imkain lichteve rachmane gabe parshas tzitzis. If the Torah is just coming to tell you the mitzvah of tzitzis, why doesn't it say this in the parsha of tzitzis? Parshas Shalach, that's the parsha of tzitzis. Why does it say it here in parshas Kiseitze? Lamai hilchase kasvei. Why did the Torah write it here? Elamai is coming to teach you a new chiddush, that you could do the mitzvah of tzitzis even with shatnez. Or the reason is because there's something extra here. What's extra? The shatnez is extra here. Mechdi, let's see. Kosav, the Torah already writes, Ubeget klayim shatnez lo yala alecha, that you should not wear a garment of shatnez. This is a pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim. So leisilbash shatnez lamali. Why does it have to say here in Parshas Kiseitze a second time that you should not wear shatnez? Shmamina laf nuye. So I see that this pasuk of shatnez here is an extra pasuk to teach me that by tzitzis you can wear shatnez. Okay, so those are the two pshatim to explain why even Rabbi Yehuda would darshan smuchim to teach you that the esse is deicha leis esse, and you could wear tzitzis, which is shatnez. But now the Gemara is going to get into a whole discussion regarding the second pshat that we just said here, that shatnez is extra in this pasuk. Is it really extra here? Fragt the Gemara, Hanech mitzrich tzrichi. These two psukim that it says regarding shatnez are both needed. Why? Because of Rachmana lo yala alecha, if the Torah would say the term of lo yala alecha, do not have it come onto your body, which is what it says first in Parshas Kedoshim, hava mina, then I would think to say, kol derech halah asa Rachmana. Any way of placing shatnez onto your body, that's what halah means, you're placing it on your body, is forbidden. And that would include vafilim moichrei ksos, even people that are selling clothing, and sometimes the people that sell clothing, so in those days they didn't have these mannequins that they put the clothing on to present to their customers, so the sellers would dress themselves with these garments to show, to demonstrate to the customers what these garments look like. So I would think that even then the Torah would say that it's asur. So Rashi over here says that the chiddush is, the person that's putting on this garment does not even have kavanah to wear it as a garment. He's just doing it to present to others. Other Rishonim add even more. It's not enough the fact that he doesn't have kavanah. Other Rishonim argue with Rashi. They say the point is that this person is putting on this garment, he's getting no pleasure out of it. He actually might even getting pain from it. It's too hot for him. He's not enjoying wearing this garment at all. So I would think that even then, when it's a pain for him. He's not getting any pleasure whatsoever. I would think it's still asur for shatnez. So kas of Rachmana. That's why we need the pasuk over here in Parshas Kisei, where it says loy silbash shatnez. Do not wear shatnez. What does that mean? Dumye de levishe de ispe hana. You're only not allowed to wear the shatnez if the person has hana, but not a person that's selling garments and is trying it on to show people. On the other hand, because of Rachmana loy silbash, if the Torah would only write the pasuk of loy silbash, not to wear shatnez, havamine dafke levishe de nofish hanayase. Levishe is the normal way of a person using garments, wearing garments where there's a lot of pleasure by this. Only then is it not allowed for a person to wear shatnez. Avol halah loy. But if a person places shatnez on his body, not like this seller that's presenting it to someone else, but placing it on your body, not in the usual way of wearing it, I would think that then it's allowed, because you have less hana, you don't have the usual hana of like when you wear a garment, because of Rachmana lo yala alecha. That's why the Torah has to write the term lo yala, that you shouldn't even have the shatnez placed onto your body. So therefore, the point the Gemara is asking is, we see that you can't say that the leisilba shatnez that it says here, together with tzitzis as an extra pasuk. We need both psukim. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't dash in any smuchim here to teach me that you can wear tzitzis even though it's shatnez. The Gemara answers, no, it's still extra. Why? Because imkei lichtov rachmana leisilba shatnez. It would be enough for the Torah to write, don't wear shatnez. Tsemer upishtim lamali. Why is it necessary for the Torah to spell out what shatnez is? That shatnez is tsemer and pishtim. And the Gemara explains this. Now, what do you mean? Why? Of course the Torah has to spell out what shatnez is. If it wouldn't say that shatnez is tsemer pishtim, how would I know what it is? So the Gemara says, Mechti, let's see. Ksiv, the pasuk says, Ubeget klayim shatnez lo yala lecha. Do not wear a garment of shatnez. And uses the term beged. Beged, shatnez, do not wear. Now, what does beged mean? That's the key over here. When the Torah says beged, a garment, how do we know what kind of material a garment is made of? Tana debate Rabbi Shmuel. So Rabbi Shmuel taught about this. You have a lot of times in Torah regarding different halachas where it just says the term begadim. It talks about garments. And we don't know what kind of garments the Torah is talking about, which materials. But then there's one time where the Torah specifies clearly that it's tsemer upishtim, that it refers either to garments made from wool or garments made from linen. So we're not talking about a garment that's shatnez, wool and linen, but it means either wool or linen. Where do we see this? Rashi brings that the Torah regarding the halachas of the negayim in a beged, there the Torah specifies that the whole concept of a nega in a beged is only for a beged that's either a wool garment or a linen garment. If you have a nega in some other polyester or anything else, the whole din of negayim doesn't apply. Only wool and linen. That's what it says in the Torah. So once the Torah specifies in one place that the term begadim means either tsemer or pishtim, afkol tsemer pishtim. Anytime the Torah speaks about a garment, it means tsemer and pishtim. So if so, the question is, tsemer upishtim, the cost of Rachmana, lamali. Over here, when the Torah repeats the lav of shatnez again, so true, as we said before, it has to repeat the lav of shatnez again to teach me the details about the hana and so on. But regarding the two words, tzemer upishtim, why does the Torah have to write that again? I would understand on my own that the beged that it's speaking about is talking about tzemer and pishtim. And it says shatnez. What does shatnez mean? Not to mix the two together. So I would know beged shatnez means not to mix linen and wool. So why does the Torah write that? Shma mina lafnu yeh. So the two words of tzemer and pishtim, they are extra. Even if the whole pasuk is not extra, but the two words of tzemer and pishtim are extra, and that's coming to teach me that you can wear tzitzis even if it's klayim, even if it's shatnez. Okay, but the Gemara is still not done with this. The Gemara says, "Vakati yitztrich." Even the two words of tzemer and pishtim that seem to be extra, I could still argue that that's still needed. It's not coming to teach me that you can wear tzitzis that's shatnez. Why? Going back to the point that we said before, when it comes to shatnez, there's wearing it as a garment, and there's shatnez that you can just place on your body to warm you, and not wearing it as a regular garment. And there could be, I might think that there's a distinction. So now, itzrich, I would think that I need this to tell me as follows. So, there would be room to say, Halah, when it comes to placing the garment on your body, you don't have a lot of pleasure with that. So over there, I would say that the isser of placing the garment on your body, maybe that isser is only for tzemer and pishtim, and not anything else. Levisha, the nafish anayasa, but I would think, but maybe when it comes to wearing a garment, which is much more of a hana, so it's a bigger isser, more of a hana on the isser, maybe I would say kol tre mini yasser rachmana. Maybe the Torah, when it says beged shatnez over here, the Torah is coming to say any type of hana the Torah says is asr. And therefore, kasav rachmana tzemer pishtim. Maybe that's why the Torah has to specify dafket tzemer and pishtim to say that don't think that the Torah is repeating the lav of shatnez a second time to tell you that there's different degrees to this lav of shatnez. If you're having less of a hana of the shatnez, then the Isra is limited. It's only for tzemer and pishtim. If you're having more of a hana of the shatnez, because you're wearing it like a garment, then that lav of shatnez is a broader Isra. It includes other types of materials, not only tzemer and pishtim. So that's why the Torah has to specify tzemer and pishtim. So those two words are not extra. So the Gemara says, no, it still is extra, because in kain lishtoik kra minei, it would not be necessary for the Torah to write the two words of tzemer and pishtim. V'teisi shatnez mehalah. I would just compare it. I would learn out Gzeira Shaveh. It says here shatnez. It says shatnez the earlier time in Parshas Kedoshim. I would compare them both times. The whole issur of shatnez is only tzemer pishtim. There'd be no reason to think that shatnez applies to any other materials. So therefore, the question still remains: why did the Torah write the words tzemer pishtim? And the answer is, like we said, because it's teaching me that by tzitzis you can wear tzitzis even if it's shatnez. Okay, so this is the conclusion of the drasha. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, tzemer pishtim is extra words. Now the Gemara has another question here. Is this the source that you're allowed to wear tzitzis even though it's shatnez? The Gemara is going to bring that seemingly we have another source for this. The Tana de Be'er Rabbi Shmuel. According to Tana de Be'er Rabbi Shmuel, we just said that tzemer pishtim are extra, because we would know it's tzemer pishtim. So taime, the kasav rachmana tzemer pishtim. So you're telling me that I'm learning that you can wear tzitzis, that's shatnez, because of the extra words tzemer pishtim. Halavachi, if not these extra words, so then I would say klayim b'tzitzis, wearing klayim shatnez with tzitzis, havamina d'asar rachmana. I would say that the Torah says it's forbidden. But the problem is, I'll tell you, there's really another source before this. Because it says in the Torah, v'asolem tzitzis al kamfe v'gdeyem. You should place the tzitzis on the corners of your garments. And now v'tana de Rabbi Shmuel. So it says here bigdayim. What does bigdayim mean? What kind of a garment are we talking about? So as we said before, Rabbi Shmuel says kol begodim. Anytime it says in the Torah any garment that it speaks about, over here bigdayim. What is this? Tzemer upishtimheim. It's either wool or linen. V'amar achmana. And what is the Torah saying? Avid leit tcheles. You should place into this garment the strings of the tzitzis, which are made tcheles, which have to be dyed tcheles. And now the Gemara says, now what are these strings of the tzitzis that you place into your garment of tzitzis? Tcheles amrahu. The tcheles is made of wool. How do we know that the tcheles is made of wool? Umimai the tcheles amrahu. How do I know this? That tcheles is wool. Amra means wool. Midesheish kitna, because sheish, when it uses in the Torah the term sheish, which is linen, sheish means linen. So therefore, tcheles amrahu. I know that tcheles means wool. What's the Gemara saying here? So Rashi says, the Gemara here is referring to the big day kahuna. When you look at the different materials that the Torah says the big day kahuna are made of, it says it's made of sheish, which is linen, and then it says it's made up also of tcheles and argamon and telas shani. So what are all these different materials that the big day kahuna are made up of? So the Gemara is saying that sheish means linen. And then the tcheles, the argamon, the telas shani, whether it's blue or purple or red, those are all wool. Right? The big day kahuna were made shatnez. At least the gartel of the big day kahuna was made shatnez. So from there we understand that when the Torah says tcheles is wool. So now what's the Gemara's question here? The Gemara is saying, if you look in the very pasuk itself, "Asul lahem tzitzis al kanfei bigdayim," that itself should teach you that tzitzis can be shatnez. Why? Because the garment itself may be either wool or linen. That's what Rabbi Shmuel said. Whenever it says in the Torah bigdayim, it could be even linen. So you have a linen garment and you have wool tzitzis. So wool tzitzis that are tied into a linen garment is shatnez. So just by looking at the pasuk itself and seeing how the mitzvah is said, shouldn't that automatically teach me that it could be done with shatnez? Why do I need the special smuchim that we said before to teach me that it could be done with shatnez? So the Gemara answers no. Just from the pasuk itself, where it says "V'asulem tzitzis al kanfei vigdayim," that does not prove that you're allowed to make your tzitzis shatnez. Why? I still need the special drasha we had before that it says shatnez together with tzitzis to teach me that it can be made shatnez. Because if not for that drasha, I would think to say kiderava, like what Rava said. And here in this drasha of Rava, we're going to see that tzitzis cannot be made shatnez. The Rava asked the question. Ksiv, in one pasuk it says hakonof. When it describes the mitzvah of tzitzis, it says hakonof psil techeles. What does hakonof psil techeles mean? Hakonof means min konof. That the strings have to be the same exact type of material as the garment itself. Ksiv, but in another pasuk it says, over here, the pasuk that we're quoting until now, where it says the mitzvah of tzitzis in Parshas Kiseitze, so it says semur pishtim. Right before that it says semur pishtim, which means that as long as your strings are made of wool or from linen, it doesn't make a difference if it's the same min as the garment itself. So the question is, does the strings of the tzitzis have to be the same type of material as the garment itself or not? So what did Rava answer to this? How do we answer this question? It depends. If you're using for the strings of your tzitzis wool or linen. So now, if the strings are going to be wool or linen, so then the Torah is telling you that you can use wool or linen strings, either one, as long as it's not going to end up being shatnez. And therefore, paitrin bein biminan, using wool or linen strings are going to pater you. They can be used for tzitzis. Whether you're using them that the strings are the same min as the garment itself, as long as it's not going to be shatnez. So if the garment itself is wool, then the strings have to be wool. If the garment itself is linen, then the strings have to be linen. And bein shalai b'minan. And also shalai b'minan, which means that if the strings are going to be from wool or linen, so then if your garment is going to be from silk or any other material, it's also going to be okay. Because over there's no issue of shatnez either. That's if your strings are going to be from tzemer or pishtim. So you can use tzemer or pishtim with a garment, whether biminon, whether shaloi biminon. The point is, as long as it's not going to be shatnez. Shar minin, however, if it's other minin, meaning if the strings are made from silk or any other material, so then biminon paitrin. Here's where the Torah gives the condition of hakonof, that the strings have to be from the same material as the garment itself. That if it's the same material, then it patters for the mitzvah of tzitzis. Shaloi biminon ain't paitrin. But if the tzitzis, the strings, which are not from linen or wool, but it's a different material, it could be silk or whatever it is, so then if it's not going to be the same min as the garment itself, it's not going to pattern. So what's the point that we see from Rava's drasha? That by the mitzvah of tzitzis, when you look into the psukim, the pasuk of hakonof, min konof, and then the pasuk of tzemer pishtim, we interpret this to mean that the mitzvah of tzitzis has to be done in a way that it will not be shatnez. So therefore, we can't say that we would learn it just from Al Kanfe Bigdayim, because Adarabbe, in these psukim we see that it should not be shatnez. And that's why we have to have the drasha of the smuchin of Tzemer and Pishtim, that it says it near tzitzis, to tell me that it could be shatnez. Sagt the Gemara, but could we say that this is an answer for Rabbi Shmuel? V'hatana debei Rabbi Shmuel lesle de Rava. Rabbi Shmuel does not hold of this whole drasha of Rava. Why? Because according to the drasha of Rava, when the pasuk says hakanaf psilt cheles, what is hakanaf talking about? It's not talking about a linen garment or a wool garment. It's talking about meshi, silk, or any other kind of a strings that are not from wool or linen. But Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is when the Torah talks about the tzitzis, the beged, it's only talking about wool or linen. So Rabbi Shmuel doesn't hold of this drasha of Rava altogether. So therefore we go back to our question. According to Rabbi Shmuel, when the Torah says al kanfe bigdayim, shouldn't that itself teach you that the garment itself could be made from wool and the tzitzis could be made from linen, which is shatnez? So why do we need the special drasha that we said before of the smuchin from the shatnez and the tzitzis to say that it could be made shatnez? So the Gemara answers, no, itztrich. I still need that special drasha. So kedai techamine, because I would still think to say ki diyuke de Rava, that Rabbi Shmuel would say similar to the diuk of Rava, even if not exactly like Rava said, that Hakanov is speaking about a different kind of a garment, which is not wool or linen. Rabbi Shmuel holds that Torah only speaks about wool or linen, but I would still think similar to what Rava says, that it does not include shatnez. And I would say as follows: Hakanov min kanov, when the Torah says Hakanov, and it means that the tzitzis, the strings, has to be the same material as the garment itself. This is what the Torah is saying. Avidle tzemer litzemer, that when you make your tzitzis, so the strings have to be wool, like the garment itself, which is wool, upishtim lepishtim, or linen strings for a linen garment. That's in a case when you have using tzemer or pishtim, it has to be each for its kind, that it shouldn't be shatnez. And v'chiyavidas tzemer litzemer, and when you make the garment of tzemer, of wool, so then the tzitzis is also wool, so then tzaveh. That's where the mitzvah of tcheles comes in, to dye its tcheles, because tcheles is only if it's wool, as we brought before, that tcheles refers to wool. But if it's pishtim, then it does not have to be dyed as tcheles. Avol tzemer lepishtim, upishtim letzemer loy. But maybe to make the tzitzis, that if the garment is tzemer, and the tzitzis are going to be pishtim, or the other way around, the garment is pishtim, and the garment and the tzitzis are going to be tzemer, loy, maybe that is not allowed. So even though it's true that according to Rabbi Shmuel, al kanfe bigdayim is referring to tzemer or pishtim and not any other kind of a material, but maybe from hakanaf I would say that this means that it cannot be shatnez, that the tzitzis has to be the same material as the garment itself. So therefore, Kosav Rachmana Tzemer Pishtim, that's why we have the extra words of Tzemer Pishtim regarding the Isser of Shatnez, that it says right near the mitzvah of Tzitzis, Ta'afil Tzemer Pishtim, or Pishtim Tzemer. That you can make the Tzitzis even in a way that it's Shatnez, that the strings are wool and the garment is linen, or the other way around, and it's allowed even though it's Shatnez. So this is the conclusion, at least according to Tanid Be Rabbi Shmuel, that the words Tzemer Pishtim are extra, that teach me that Esse Deichel Lois Esse, as we see it, benigeh to the mitzvah of Tzitzis and the Lois Esse of Shatnez.